Buon pomeriggio a tutte e a tutti e benvenuti. Possiamo cominciare con la conferenza dal titolo Antisemitismo e odio online, il complottismo al tempo di Internet.
Lo facciamo dando per primo la parola ad Andre Oboler dell'Online Hate Prevention Institute. Il professor Oboler è uno dei principali esperti mondiali dell'antisemitismo 2.0, antisemitismo online. Siamo particolarmente onorati della sua presenza, lo ringraziamo anche perché si collega dall'Australia e in questo momento è notte in Australia. Quindi a lui la parola. Nel dargli la parola ringrazio il lavoro di interpretariato dalla lingua italiana-inglese e nella lingua LIS degli interpreti. Grazie, a lei la parola.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. I have some slides I put together. I wonder if it's possible to share them, if it's possible to open the share screen.
Sì, possiamo abilitare il professore alla condivisione.
Thank you. Not quite yet. Okay. While we wait for, oh, I think it is ready now. Okay. So again, thank you very much for having me. I must say I am very nervous because 2 days ago we had an election and I was just elected as the president of the Jewish community for my state, which is the largest Jewish community in Australia, 45% of the Jewish community. So now I am not only an expert, I'm also required to be the community leader that must respond to the problem, which is, I think, a whole other level of responsibility. So I have the utmost respect for the community leaders in Italy, and also the members of parliament and the government experts who shoulder the heavy burden of tackling these problems. So I start by thanking all of you for all of your work. As experts, we research, we find what we think will be solutions, but the heavy lifting of preventing the anti-Semitism is up to you. So I want to start by discussing the original concept of Antisemitism 2.0. And this started in 2008 was when I first raised it. And it was coined in a paper that was released at the Global Forum for Combating Anti-Semitism. It was the first paper to discuss the way that social media normalized anti-Semitism online, but also created a risk that it would then spread offline into real-world society. The threat of Antisemitism 2.0 was the creation of an online culture that made the anti-Semitism socially acceptable. It changed our cultural acceptability. It changed our society. It lowered our resistance to anti-Semitism. It lowered our resistance to hate speech. It allowed hate networks to draw people in, and it allows them to grow. So here's the definition from that 2008 paper. It said, Antisemitism 2.0 is the use of online social networking and content collaboration to share demonization, conspiracy theories, Holocaust denial, classic anti-Semitic motives with a view to creating social acceptability for such content. Either Jews in general or the Jewish state may be targeted by Antisemitism 2.0, and often the distinction between Israel and Jews is lost. Anti-Semitism specifically related to Israel is commonly perpetrated by making comparisons between Israel and popular paradigms of evil, the two classic cases being Nazi Germany and apartheid South Africa. One of the first big talks on Antisemitism 2.0 was 2010 to the subcommittee of the Italian Parliament. And again, I thank Fiamma Nierenstein for her efforts organising that, and Stefano, who was there also as an expert back then. It was a wonderful experience to be able to put this major problem in front of the Parliament, in front of people that could do something about it. And there was an excellent report on that, and changes in the legislation. I think Italy did really well there. So again, what was said to the Italian Parliament was that the danger was not that people might read the content and be inspired to become anti-Semitic. The danger was that they would accept it as a valid viewpoint. They would accept it as a fact of life. They would accept anti-Semitism as something that you could agree with or not agree with, but either opinion is okay. This is the danger. This is where the normalization comes from. There's also yes. Okay, thank you. So there is also a link to conspiracy theories. Back in the 2008 paper, it says the agenda of Antisemitism 2.0 is not simply about promoting ideas. It is about discussing them and conferring on them the legitimacy as one possible truth, one truth among many narratives that may exist. It's about blurring the boundaries in discourse. That is what hate conspiracy does. And that is what Antisemitism 2.0 has always done in social media. I want to speak a minute, it was mentioned already today, about blood libel. And I note that the blood libel, this fake news, this conspiracy theory of hate, is not new. Before the internet, before we even had widespread literacy, the blood libel was spread through art, through architecture. It was spread on the walls of the churches. This form of anti-Semitism still occurs today. As you know, in March this year, we had another painting in Italy of blood libel. The problem is not just that it exists. The problem is once it exists, it goes onto the internet and it spreads. In the bottom of the screen, you can see how this one image then gets spread to many different sites. Some of these are fringe sites that host significant amounts of anti-Semitism. In 2016, we saw a big change to Antisemitism 2.0. This came as a result of the US presidential race, the rise of the alt-right, with anti-Semitism at their core. They sought to normalize the hate in society, and they did normalize the hate in society. No longer was it a threat that Antisemitism 2.0 might make hate normal. Now it was a reality. And this was their idea of red-pilling the public, opening their ideas to narratives that demonize Jews, to conspiracy theories, to Holocaust denial, to spreading the anti-Semitic ideas that were discussed back in 2008. Part of that culture, where the alt-right came from, was on Poll, on 4chan, on 8chan, two different related platforms. That platform deliberately tried to mainstream anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. It tried to promote a culture of white nationalism. It promoted a culture with anti-Semitism at its core. The people in that platform didn't do it on their own. We later learned through research after the Christchurch attack how Stormfront, a neo-Nazi forum, infiltrated this particular forum and sought deliberately to change their culture. They sought to make them neo-Nazis, and they were successful. The ideology, of course, is what we then saw reflected in 4 terrorist attacks through 2019. So this is a picture of the message that was posted on 8chan about the attack in the Poway synagogue in the United States. I'm not focusing on the message from the attacker, their efforts to live stream their attack. I want to focus on this little message with the green anonymous down below with the arrow pointing to it. It says, "Based, get the high score." Somebody in this forum says, "I'm going to go out very shortly and kill people. You can watch me do it at this web address." And the response they get back is, "Great, go for it. We're waiting to watch you." This is really scary. This is a culture that is promoting violence and extremism. What's also scary is the manifesto of hate was put online in multiple different places, and it took 21 hours, 24 hours, 50 hours over time until the manifesto was removed. I don't even mean copies, and there were copies. I'm talking the original. It took over 50 hours before that manifesto was removed. And in that time, it was seen by almost 76,000 people. 76,000 people that are in closed networks that are trying to share and spread hate. Shared networks, which are in fringe platforms where last year we saw 4 people radicalized into extremism. I also want to mention that it's not just social media. In Australia, we found that one of our largest bookstores, we still have bookstores, one of our largest bookstores had 94 different editions of Mein Kampf for sale. Some of them were virtually free. Some of them were original editions that cost a lot of money. Some of them had descriptions that were targeted specifically for white supremacists and neo-Nazis. This is the official Nazi Bible. That's what some of them said. This material is what's used to radicalize these extremists. I must say, a year ago, I visited CDEC. I was in Milan, and I walked around near the Christmas market, and I sent Stefano back a picture. I found a copy of Mein Kampf in the bookstore within a short walk from the office that's doing the monitoring. This problem is around the world, and we need to recognize the danger that it poses. We need to recognize that some of this literature is being marketed specifically to people that want to use it for radicalization. This brings us, and I'm almost done, this brings us to 2020. It brings us to COVID. Antisemitism 2.0 in the world of COVID is a bit different. The right-wing extremists have largely now been pushed off the mainstream platforms. They've moved on to fringe platforms. They've moved on to encrypted platforms. They're now in platforms where they're only speaking to each other, where they're living in an alternative reality. They've been producing conspiracy theories, propaganda designed to link COVID and Jews. Even amongst themselves, this content has not been viral. It has not been well accepted, largely because the focus has been on China. So the narrative to make it the Jews responsible hasn't been as effective. It hasn't taken root. But there is a different narrative. There is a narrative that the Jews are profiting from COVID. There is a narrative that they will profit from the vaccines. There's all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories that the vaccines are going to microchip everyone, that, this is all part of controlling the population, which goes back to the elders of Zion and the Jews control the world, the government, the banks, the media, conspiracy theories. those are out there and they're growing. And they're going to continue growing through the period of recovery from the pandemic. Antisemitism 2.0 next year, in 2021, is going to be on the rise. And it's going to be a problem not just online, but in the community. All of the spread of anti-Semitism that's happened while people have been in lockdown, while people have been trying to distance themselves and spending more time online, all of that is going to manifest itself in the coming year. The question is, how much critical mass have these people got in their fringe platforms? I will skip this. These are examples from Twitter. On the mainstream platforms, QAnon has replaced the alt-right. Now it too is increasing, and it is increasingly being pushed away from the mainstream platforms. The anti-Semites on the mainstream platforms are trying to work around the artificial intelligence, around the moderators. They're trying to fly below the radar, trying to not be overt in what they do. Their purpose is not to directly spread so much anti-Semitism. Their purpose is to entice people from the mainstream into these fringe platforms. That's the new challenge. Holocaust denial is a key part of that. I will comment on Twitter specifically. I found a number of Holocaust denial propaganda videos just last week, reported them to Twitter. Twitter let the person who hosted them change their account so that only people who follow them could see the videos. This was enough rather than removing the content. That makes Twitter, a mainstream platform, just another fringe closed network that people can add other people that are radicalized to and work behind the scenes where only the extremists see it. Those combating anti-Semitism are increasingly being targeted, both institutions and individually. They need more support from government, from police. There's a need for more funding for both the work, but also the security for those doing the work. We need to take care that when we tell people to speak out with counter speech, that those people can also become targets. We need to ensure we teach people when it's safe to use counter speech. And we need to recognize that that alone is not a solution. We need monitoring, we need regulation. We also need transparency reports. And a transparency report produced by a company on itself is not transparent. The companies come with their own definitions. Even when civil society is involved, if they insist that civil society works with the company's definition or loses the right to be recognized by the company, that reinforces the existing definitions. It prevents new forms of anti-Semitism or forms that weren't properly recognized from now being recognized. That is also something we need to work on. I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing the other presentations.
Grazie ad Andre Oboler.